Hey, how's it going, everybody? If you're new here, welcome in. And if you've been here before, welcome back. I'm Rollshambo, the connoisseur and collector of all things sharp and shiny. And today I want to talk about my favorite Microtech release this year, possibly ever. This is such a good knife. But you know what? If you've seen one Microtech box, you've seen them all. So let's go ahead and fix that. This is the Microtech Ludt Gen 3. And this is a knife that was difficult to get my hands on, to say the least, because they keep selling out every time they drop. And here's the thing, guys. I am not typically an out-the-side automatic knife fan. Generally speaking, I prefer manual knives to automatic knives, and if they had a manual version of this available, I would probably buy that as well. However, there was something about the updates that they made to this knife that made it impossible for me to ignore any longer. This is the third generation, and up until now, I've been able to resist the draw because I've heard great things about the Microtech Ludt. For crying out loud, it was the first knife that they put into production. Or I guess you could say that the UDT was the first knife, but that's kind of the grandpappy of this one. And honestly, even though it's an out-the-side automatic knife, this is one of those rare exceptions to the rule. And I think that it's always important to have rules, but it's also fun to find the exceptions, because that's how you know that a knife is truly good. And I had a plan. The plan is that if I didn't end up liking it as much as I had hoped, that I would just turn around and sell it, because these are selling out so fast that there'd definitely be a market for it. However, it came in, and I gotta say, as of right now, there's no way. It's not possible. I couldn't get rid of this because I don't want to. It's so freaking good. I already released a video where I compared this Microtech Ludt Gen 3 against this super sweet ProTech Strider PT with the compound Mike Irie grind and the black pearl button. And if you want to watch that, I'll go ahead and link that up in the corner. I go over the specs of this knife. This is not really a first reaction video. It's not really a full review either. I just wanted to talk about why I think this is the best Microtech release this year, without a shadow of a doubt. Is it the best Microtech release ever? Maybe. That is, 100% matter of opinion. In fact, this whole video is nothing but opinion, but I'm enamored by this. And I had this thought ever since day one, and so I held off on doing a more in-depth video on it because I wanted to make sure that it wasn't just the honeymoon phase. I wanted to make sure that I was being accurate with my opinion and truly representing myself, because it's easy to be hyped on a knife right after you get it, and sometimes those feelings fade and you're like, oh, you know what, it's cool, it's just another knife. Well, this knife has been dominating my pocket pretty regularly. Now, they do have some very interesting changes on the Gen 3 that we didn't have on the Gen 2, and I'll go over those for you real quick. First of all, the last generation of the Microtech Ludt was a clamshell design. As you can see, they've updated that. We now have a full body length backspacer instead, and that backspacer is made out of titanium. The handle scales are still aluminum. However, having this design, instead of a clamshell, you get a titanium backspacer. I think that's awesome. It looks stylish, it serves a good purpose, and it allows water to actually drain out. The whole draw is that you'd be able to fire this underwater. Well, if you do that, you need to get the water out, and these holes in the backspacer will definitely allow you to do that. There is no internal milling because there's no space for it. Instead, we have these cutouts here at the top, which are filled in by 3M traction tape. And I didn't know how I was going to feel about it. I watched some other reviews before this came in, and one of the reviews that I watched said that they didn't like the way that the clip felt against this traction tape when it goes in and out of the pocket. Yeah, there's no issues that I have with the traction tape and this pocket clip. I haven't had any issues. It's not like the traction tape is tearing up my pants, at least not so far. It does stick in the pocket pretty easily. It's not too hard to actually get it in the pocket. You don't have to do a clip lift or anything like that. And the clip hasn't bent up like it did on my Microtech Ramlock stitch. I had to kind of bend that stitch clip back down. Another point of contention that a lot of people have is they don't like the clip. I think that most people just don't like the clip because it doesn't look the most aesthetically pleasing. Honestly, they probably could have ended the clip right about there and it would have been totally fine. As it stands, I don't think that it looks too hideous, and I haven't had any issues with it ergonomically speaking. It functions well. It's not deep carry, but not every clip has to be. And for those of you guys who like them, there is of course a spot for a lanyard. I wish that lanyard hole had been taken out and they had put it in the back spacer as kind of a hidden lanyard hole, but I also wonder if they had the room. The reason why I wonder that is because this is not a very thick profiled knife. It's kind of interesting to me because it feels overbuilt, but it has a thin handle scale profile. For example, here I have a Spyderco Paramilitary 2, and the Paramilitary 2 is thicker on the handle scales than it is on the LUDT Gen 3. And I'll put them together as best I can so you can see that. It's actually significantly thicker, and this is not a super thick carry knife. I love the Spyderco Paramilitary 2s. I think that they're great carries, but this has been dominating my pocket ever since it came in, and I find myself really enjoying its slim and slender profile. Something else which is making me just fall in love with this knife is the blade and edge geometry. I think a lot of people take this for granted, but that is stupidly thin behind the edge. I don't know what the exact measurement is. I'm sure someone can let me know in the comments section, but this slice is really good. I don't know who they have over at Microtech doing the hand sharpened edges, because if you didn't know, on the American made Microtechs, they actually do these edges by hand. You know, they are ground on a belt. Some guy is sitting there just pounding these out. And the edges that they've been putting on their knives lately have been next level impressive. The edge on my Microtech stitch, fantastic. The edge on this one, fantastic. I really like that. And I'll show you what I mean. This slices really well. Now, cutting paper is no big feat. The purpose of a paper cut test is to show how well it slices. Paper will actually it'll do a good job of revealing just how good the edge is and the edge/blade geometry. The cleaner it slips through the paper without tearing, the better the edge and the better the blade geometry, because if it was thick back here, it might cut the paper, but it might also tear the paper at the same time. But on this one, you have no issue whatsoever. It is really good, and it's really good all the way through. You get the little swirls in there. That's another indicator. If you can do the curved cuts in paper without it tearing, that's how you know you've got really good blade and edge geometry. It cuts like a demon. Now, most of the ones that we've seen videos on so far have been the standard black version. This is the tan version because it came from NC Blade. I believe it's actually an NC Blade exclusive in this tan color. I could be wrong, but they're the only ones I've seen with the tan color so far. I also don't mind that. I actually do like the fact that they have other color options already available other than just the regular black. The regular black looks fantastic, but it's not as snazzy in my opinion as this tan color. Let me know in the comment section down below. Do you prefer the black? I've also seen a green released, or do you like this tan? Also, they have officially released a second blade shape. You can now get this in a Tonto version. I still prefer this version if I have my pick of the two, because I think that the blade geometry is going to be better on this one because the Tonto version is going to be thicker towards the tip. So for my purposes, I do a lot of cutting and slicing. This would actually work better for me than a traditional style Tonto. But I'm not actually done talking about the differences between the last gen and this gen. This iteration also brings with it bearings. And you might be wondering, is it really necessary? I don't think that it's necessary, but it has a really nice effect because the deployment is really smooth, but also when you go to put it away, that's also really smooth as well. And it'll only continue to get better as the bearings wear a track in the tang of this blade. And then finally, the last change is this fuller. The previous versions of the LUDT did not have a fuller here, but I'm glad that they included that. It's actually very stylish. I mean, it's not like you can actually use it. You know, I still find myself trying to reverse flick it, but maybe that is just pointing out that maybe we do need a manual version of the LUDT. I can't believe that we don't have one yet. I think that even if they were to do one in the ram lock, that would be fantastic. I really, really like this knife, and I'm not turned off at all by the fact that it's an out the side automatic switchblade. Even though I thought that I might actually feel that way, I no longer have those feelings. This has been really good so far. And whether or not I can suggest it is going to come down to a couple things. Number one, a lot of people are wary about Microtech's price. That being said, despite the fact that we have pretty much the same build as we always have with M390 and aluminum, and now we're adding in a titanium backspacer, the cost on this is still actually very close to what the last generation was, coming in at about $260. Keep in mind, this is an American-made knife with a lot of really good milling done on these handle scales, and also milling out titanium is not cheap for American knife makers. So $260 for this build is actually really, really good. As someone who really appreciates titanium, I thought that maybe I would feel like the aluminum handle scales would be cheap feeling, but they're not. They actually do feel premium, and at no point do I ever feel like this knife is overpriced. For what you get, I think that $260, especially here in 2024, is rather fair. That being said, it's one of those things that you just kind of have to figure out for yourself if it's worth it or not. The fact that these are still selling out and they've done 5 or 6 releases of this knife, I think that that's a pretty good indicator. So far, I would dare to say that this has been my favorite carry knife of the year, and it's absolutely a contender for knife of the year. Now, we're still early in 2024, so does that mean that this knife is going to be my de facto 2024 knife of the year? Not necessarily. We have a lot of year left, and who knows what I'm going to check out next. But if you want to see for yourself, make sure to check on one of the videos that pops up next.